I'm Taylor.
I'm Melissa.
This is our cinema romance. Thank you, everyone who has been watching the channel. If you could like this video, please do. Also, if you haven't subscribed, we would love it if you did. And jump into the comments. Let us know what you think about this or anything else that you would like to hear us talk about. But today, we are returning to one of my favorite topics, what happens in the second act? And we are asking what happens in the second act of Jagged Edge.
And some of you probably around our age have probably seen that movie, remember it from the 80s. It is, I think, at least I remember it being quite a cool movie. Glenn Close,
So
lots
yeah,
of acting in it.
I watched this again recently. You didn't have a chance to watch it again, but
I had a chance to watch half of it.
oh, okay. I mean, spoiler alert, if you like thrillers, this one specifically takes place in a courtroom, so courtroom thriller, and it's Glenn Close, Jeff Bridges, two very young, attractive, charismatic people in a studio movie. It's worth watching. Uh,
Written by Joe Esterhaus.
Yes, and I will talk a little bit more about that. Um, but I mean, this is a good movie. I think it's a very good movie. I don't know how much unless you are unless you liked the movie when it was released in the 80s, I don't know how much you're going to get out of the movie today.
I think that's fair. In just what I was able to rewatch, I I was a little shocked at the beginning though. That's a lot. That first scene.
Yes. So Jagged Edge, like quick synopsis, the movie, and going back to what Melissa said, this was written by Joe Esterhaus. Uh, I at least think of Jagged Edge as sort of a precursor to the like late 80s, really bulk of the 90s erotic thriller. The good one that made people want to make just way too many of these movies was Fatal Attraction. The sort of like peak erotic thriller was Basic Instinct. But there are so many others. Sliver, Jade, um, Joe Esterhaus had a hand in a lot of these. This is like a precursor to that kind of erotic thriller. Um, there's
Don't
not
forget 9.5 weeks.
uh,
Do you think that's in the same?
9.5 weeks though. There's not. I saw 9.5 weeks once when I was a teenage boy, and it speaks to what I consider the emptiness of that movie that I didn't want to see it again. Like this is a movie that is in large part about Kim Basinger being partially nude, and I was just like, okay, it's very pretty, but what I don't remember there being any kind of mystery to it, or
I
like it's
thought it was
not
an
a
interesting movie, actually. I think I probably liked it more than you.
but
But
it's not a thriller in the way that Basic Instinct is, right? Or Jay,
yeah, no, you're
Liver
right. It's more just like a psychological, erotic, not
thing.
really
Like
thriller.
yeah.
I think just talking about Fatal Attraction at all, Adrian Lyne, it just comes to mind, at least for me. So
That you I hope you mean Joe Esterhaus.
yeah, no, but just the same
And,
director of Fatal Attraction
oh,
directed nine.
Fatal Attraction, not
Yeah,
I thought you said Jagged Edge. That's
no, no.
my fault. Yeah, because Adrian Lyne, yes, Adrian Lyne directed Fatal Attraction. British filmmaker, got his start in commercials, came over at the same time as Alan Parker and Ridley and Tony Scott. Um, very visual, and 9.5 weeks certainly, like there's a lot happening on screen.
Yeah.
Um,
Good soundtrack.
sure, yeah. Um,
Let's move out of 9.5 weeks. Sorry, I brought it up.
Well, I did want to say though, Adrian Lyne, nor any of the other of that class of filmmakers, none of them directed Jagged Edge. Jagged Edge was directed by Richard Marquand. And I don't know if that's how you say it. Marquand? Marquand is probably,
Ken sounds better, but I don't know.
yeah. Directed Return of the Jedi. So there you go.
Ewoks, erotic thriller.
Exactly. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's why Jagged Edge couldn't quite hit the same heights as Fatal Attraction. It's like the guy who gave us Ewoks can't give us that Adrian Lyne level of erotism. Uh, all of this is just a goofy aside. Um, Jagged Edge is a very solid movie. It really is. And the thing that I think, or I know it's what makes the movie memorable for me. It's there's a twist at the end. Oh, because we were going to talk about you said the scene at the beginning is so brutal. Um, yes, there's a murder that happens. Jeff Bridges is accused of murdering his wife. His wife is an heiress. She owns the San Francisco Chronicle. He got a job in like the mailroom or something and like met her, wooed her. Yes,
I'm pointing out that the murderer also murdered the maid, which
yes.
I did not remember at all.
Neither did I.
The movie does a terrible job of helping the viewer like remember that there was a second person murdered, and I think that also speaks to the age in which it came out. You know, the
I
wealth.
felt like they leaned into that a bit. Like I not I know what she is certainly not the focus.
Yeah,
Um
but I forgot there was a second victim.
so
Like
did I.
until
No,
I
you're
watched
right.
it
You're
again.
right. No,
Yeah,
you're absolutely right. But I wasn't like offended by
yeah,
oh yeah, and there was a maid who got killed too. Like I didn't think it was dismissive necessarily.
yeah.
He eventually married the woman who owned the paper. He worked his way up. She made him editor in chief. So the district attorney thinks that Jeff Bridges murdered his wife and the housekeeper, um, because the business arrangement as it currently exists, she basically he works for her. He has no career outside of his relationship with her. So by getting her out of the picture, he can take over the paper. Everything gets left to him. So the district attorney, very ambitious, goes after him. Um, and Melissa, what happens in the second act?
They have a trial.
Yes. This is why I wanted to talk about Jagged Edge. Um, there are so many other movies I could have picked, but I wanted to talk about Jagged Edge again because I was like, oh yeah, people like go back and watch it again and remember how cool it was, and then I watched it again. It's like it's kind of cool. Um, so many movies are centered around a trial, and the reason why is because the structure is just right there for you. Now, that does not mean that the start of the second act in Jagged Edge aligns perfectly with the start of the trial. That's not what it means. The second act in Jagged Edge begins basically when Glenn Close agrees to take the case.
Mm.
And that's what starts it off. So once she agrees to become his lawyer, that is the beginning of the second act, and it is about the investigation. The trial itself doesn't begin until about halfway through, or it might really be just about exactly halfway. Um, and there are still the different beats that you need to have, especially in a thriller. There have got to be like reveals and twists and reversals and all kinds of fun things like that. But the 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 sort of skeletal structure, it's it is the trial.
Hmm.
And that can be true in a thriller like Jagged Edge. It can be true in a comedy like Liar Liar. It can be true
Right.
in a drama like To Kill a Mockingbird. It can be true in just about any genre where a courtroom can be the setting.
Hmm.
Um, what there are exceptions to this. There is I want to see, Melissa, if you can guess what I'm talking about. This was 90s Oscar winner. It is a legal drama, but I think only one scene takes place in a courtroom. This was a huge movie, one of the biggest stars in the world, name
Nice.
that you definitely recognize.
This is gonna make me feel dumb when
No,
I realize.
okay. Again, I'm throwing this out as like an exception that proves the rule. Aaron Brockovich.
Oh, there's only one scene in is that true?
There
If
is
you oh,
there
oh,
are scenes between lawyers and paralegals, but I think there is only one scene in that movie where they are actually sitting in a courtroom in
oh,
front of a judge. And it is a throwaway scene too, where it's basically an opportunity for the judge to, it's just a decision that he has to make. It's the judge who says, and as a resident of this county, uh, I am, deeply bothered by the implication that PG&E was aware of these issues at the time of blah 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 blah. And I think that's the only reason even that scene was set in a courtroom, was so that we could hear the judge say that.
yeah,
But otherwise, all the legal decisions, things like that, are being reported outside of the courtroom.
interesting. Oh, such a good movie.
But yeah, that though is the exception.
Yeah.
And in when I talk about, you still have to like respect the beats of the movie and things like that. Another great example is A Few Good Men. Um, A Few Good Men, the end of the trial aligns with the end of the movie.
Hmm.
Like the second act ends within the trial. I'm sure there are movies out there where you just get dropped right into a trial, like that is like the first scene of the movie and you never leave a courtroom. But for the most part, there's usually something that happens beforehand, a crime or some kind of setup that to get you into the courtroom. But then sometimes the end of the movie is the end of the trial, like in A Few Good Men. And the third act in that case is really just a showdown between Tom Cruise and Jack Nicholson. Uh, in Jagged Edge, the end of the trial aligns with the end of the second act.
Okay.
So then you get this like extended, like the third act basically happens outside of the courtroom. And even though we've already answered the question, what happens in the second act, I do want to spend a few minutes talking about the third act because that is what makes Jagged Edge memorable.
Yes, absolutely. And I forgot how good Robert Loggia is in that movie. Him and Glenn Close have this fantastic kind of chemistry going on, and I want to mention that because he was nominated for an Academy Award for that movie. So
That right?
yeah, he's nominated for Best Supporting Actor.
I did not realize that.
Yeah, and it is quite a performance. And I think I
No,
forgot about that until
yeah.
I was watching some of it. Yeah, he's really, really fun in that movie.
He's
Um,
very good. Something else that I know you, if you watched the first half of it, you would have seen one example of this, but something that stood out to me watching it again, and you and I already talked about this a little bit. Um, I mean, this was 1985. So this was, I'm not sure which like wave of feminism this would have been, but this was the sort of, it was like the peak of the era where women were not just leaving the home to work, but they were leaving the home for careers.
Hmm.
And the movie really embraces that. Uh, she is divorced, has two children, and the relationship between her and her ex-husband is one that you don't see depicted very often, where he is so, I mean, he still has a role in his children's lives, he still has a role in her life, and his role in her life is very supportive. Uh,
Yeah.
not
It's
just
awesome.
her,
It's really
yeah,
cool.
like it really jumped out at me like this guy's amazing.
Yeah.
Not just supportive of her career, she is an attorney, but also supportive of her as a newly single woman.
Yeah.
Um,
It's really quite progressive and interesting, and yeah, definitely something that I wouldn't have thought of when I initially saw the movie, but watching it now, it's like, wow, what a progressive relationship they had. That's really cool. Like, definitely.
but the third act, so the device in this movie, the Jeff Bridges is found innocent of murdering his wife. Blame gets shifted to this guy, Robert.
Spoiler alert. Like, I
I,
forgot if we
I think I had one at the beginning. In
we'll
any case, hopefully that didn't just ruin it for someone. Um, but yeah, suspicion gets thrown onto another guy. Over the course of the trial, he and Glenn Close did develop an intimate relationship. That's where a lot of her ex-husband's support comes in, or is manifest. And then to celebrate after the trial, she goes back to Jeff Bridges' place, and throughout the trial, they were receiving anonymous notes that were tight that would always begin, he is innocent. And the T was slightly raised. And Robert Loggia, an investigator, is able to like look into it, figured out that it came from a 1942 Corona. 1942 Corona that slightly raises its T's. And these anonymous notes uh, play a big part in the trial because they point them toward a witness who is ultimately instrumental not only in exonerating Jeff Bridges, but also implicating this other guy. Um, and Peter Coyote, like, he ends up just straight up admitting in the judge's chambers that they knew about this woman and had suppressed it because he is so convinced that Jeff Bridges is guilty that he didn't want her to, potentially exonerate him.
yeah.
And it's this like whole like dramatic moment of, he's an Iceman, he's a monster. And Glenn Close gets to say, "You're the monster, Peter Coyote." I don't remember what his character's name is. Um, and he even says, like, how did he do it? How did you find her? Did he call you? Was he sending you anonymous notes? Like he's got this all figured out. Well, she, thinks he's overreacting, blah, 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 blah. Trial is won, goes back to Jeff Bridges' house, wakes up the next day, decides to change the sheets, gets some bedding out of the closet, and lo and behold, what does she find on the back of the top shelf but a 1942 Corona. And she pulls it down and puts a little piece of paper in and starts typing. He is. And then INNOCEN. And then it's just this great, amazing, like music
So
crescendo.
good.
Like, this is,
So
and
good.
that's really like, that's what the mechanism of the third act, like, and I'll just go ahead and like say it, it is a twist. She presses the T. It is raised. He did do it. He is an Iceman. He is a monster. Um, and she leaves, goes back home. He comes to kill her, and she kills him instead. Everything works out great. It all. Um, so very, very, very fun, satisfying movie. But for purposes of the second act, it really is. It's all about the trial.
Yeah.
It's just, it's right there. You've got to, plug in some different beats, but and something else too. It This is something that's true of things like westerns. Why do we keep going back to westerns? Like the period in which most westerns take place is a very narrow period of time between the end of the Civil War and the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. So we're talking like charitably 40 years. Um, it's not like the old west existed for like centuries or something. But we go back to those stories because they have like baked in good guys and bad guys.
Yeah.
And whether you want to lean into that literally, like, okay, and the good guys are going to be good guys and the bad guys are going to be, or you want to take like some like postmodern approach, like deconstruct the Western, however you want to do it. Um, those archetypes are immediately there. Same thing with courtroom stuff. You've got a judge who's either going to be really stern or he's going to be comedic relief. You've got like a bailiff who can be wacky. You've got court stenographers and reporters who can, add all kinds of character and flavor, plus attorneys and assistant attorneys and jury members.
Fast waiting for them, like what's going on.
Exactly. Yeah, you've got just all kinds of shenanigans that can go on. So that's the second act of Jagged Edge. Melissa, anything else you want to say about Jagged Edge?
Um, no, like other than like that T is one of the things like that is like burned into my brain as something that was like,
Oh yeah,
like it's such a good device and it's such a fun twist and it's just very likable film.
definitely. So
And Glenn Close is, I've always loved Glenn Close. She manages to be able to say even clunker dialogue and come across very well. Like you said, Jeff Bridges is good, but he's a little hammy in this
little,
film.
he hadn't
And
quite, I think.
I think I agree. I like him more in kind of character roles rather than leading man. Like when he played a leading man, like in Starman, like that works very well.
But I mean,
And
to what extent is that a leading man? I mean, he's got
yeah,
all the like ticks and men,
yeah.
like
But it's, I guess it's a lead role, but it's a character
yeah,
lead. You
yeah.
know, it's not a lead, just like Big Lebowski, right? Like it's I like him more in those roles, I think, than the like handsome lead.
Yeah,
um
definitely. But Glenn Close definitely, and you're right.
Robert Loggia,
Yeah,
he's
yeah,
great. Yeah, and
definitely.
Peter Coyote playing that guy, like he's a jerk. You just want to punch him, you know? Like, yeah, good movie.
So, like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave us a comment, and in the meantime, I'm Taylor.
I'm Melissa.
This has been our Cinema Romance.
Bye.